Everybody, back in, it's hard to believe now, what has it been? 2011? It's hard to believe, right? 2011. We're back in late fall of 2011, mainly October of that year. Yeah, October. Hard to believe. Soon as though we're entering issue 256. Soon as though we're entering issue 56. 256 I should say. And it'll be at that time 26 issues ago. 2 years and 2 months ago that this happened. You see, 2 years, 2 months ago, Sally, at the end of issue 230, was roboticized. She had sacrificed herself to save the planet from a world-sized roboticizer. And this is all after the whole Sonic Genesis story arc had taken place. The first Genesis wave had taken place. The second Genesis wave, if you will, had taken place. After Sonic had restored the world. And what's funny about this is when she was roboticized, even though I don't like to give credit to myself, I know I'm not the only one that credits me or anybody else that said this right off the start. But when I saw the design, the roboticized design of Sally, the first one, and then even to coincide with that, when we saw the second one, the weaponized one, something told me, and then something told a lot of other people the same thing. In fact, Natalie on the Saturday Morning Sonic forums even agreed with me on this. When Sally's redesign first appeared in October of last year at the New York Comic Con. And that was basically what I had said from that very beginning, from when she was first roboticized and even to her weaponization. I said that this is going to result in her getting a redesign. I said that. I said she was going to end up getting a redesign. And I was right. She ended up getting a redesign. And a lot of people kind of bickered back and forth, saying that that wasn't going to be the case. That her redesign was not going to be because of her robotization, because of her weaponization. But myself and a few others who didn't like her being roboticized but understood why it had been done, and others out there that just didn't like the fact that this occurred. Well, for a lot of us that said her redesign was going to be due to robotization, going to be due to her weaponization, today, right now it's 11:41, but today, Ben Bates on his DeviantArt account just proved a lot of us right. A lot of us that said right from the very beginning that her redesign was going to be a result. That this redesign up here was going to be a result of her robotization. And we were right. Now how do I know this? Well, somebody over at the Save Archie Sonic forums pointed this out. Not Save Archie Sonic, but the anti-Archie Sonic forums had pointed this out because somebody else had pointed it out to them. And I checked it out for myself. And it's exactly, well, what they read, well, basically the first paragraph here, the first few paragraphs kind of explain exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I will provide a link down below so you guys can read it yourself. But this is Ben Bates and what he had to say today. He posted this about 20 hours ago, 20 hours, 34 minutes ago. This is what he had to say. And I quote, this is Ben Bates 20 hours ago, 20 and a half hours ago. And I quote, Mecha Sally. With some recent activity regarding Sally's redesign, I thought it might be fun to go through the developmental process and show some production stuff. In early 2011, editor Paul Kaminsky asked if I would be interested in redesigning Sally, and I jumped eagerly at the opportunity. I was intimidated but honored to mess around with such a prominent character. The idea was to do a 3-stage process. She would be roboticized, weaponized, and due to Eggman's tinkering, restored with a new design. At the time, I believe the plan was already in motion to do a huge story arc with her, keeping her roboticized until 250 or somewhere around there. I recall thinking it was going to be a year or two with her as a robot, and that it would be pretty cool. Knowing that I was going to do so much with the character right from the start allowed me to make certain design decisions during each stage that would eventually be reflected in her new quote-unquote normal design. The closed vest, for example. Stage 1, robotization. Okay, well, so far you kind of tell right there what a lot of people are saying by saying we were proven right. But I continue on what he said, and I quote Ben Bates, and I quote Ben Bates earlier today. Stage 1, robotization. This is where I spent the least amount of time. The only specific direction I was given was to use Patrick Spazzinski's Spaz's design from the cover of issue 29, which was totally fine with me. Issue 29 is one of the comics I purchased as a kid. I did as well. Well, I got it for a gift from my mom when she came to visit me in Kansas, but never mind. Continuing on, and I quote Ben Bates, and I quote Ben Bates, and I quote him, quote, and I recall being bitterly disappointed by her interior design. This is Ben Bates talking. Spaz's cover made her look cool. I don't recall what the story was about at all. I guess it wasn't very good. But I spent a lot of time admiring that cover. I wanted to capture its essence as much as possible, but also ensure it fit into the current look and feel of the video game's visual robotic presentation. I've stated this before, but the video games are what I like. They're what inspired me to read and eventually draw Sonic comics. I want comics that fit perfectly with the games, and I think all of my design choices and philosophy come from that interest. I don't care what's been done in the comic or how things look in the comic. It's got to be like the games. So decisions So decisions had to be made to flesh out this full design. Okay, so decisions had to be made to flesh out this full design. Removed the text patterns across her body, along with additional muscular bumps and bits. Too much detail and incongruous with the games. Removed the shoulder pads. I knew I was going to design a second form. Okay, removed the shoulder pads. Removed the shoulder pads. I knew I was going to design a second form of Mecha Sally, and those shoulder pads were looking pretty wicked. I wanted to bring those in later to help sell the idea of her upgrade, making her tougher. Solve the problem of her hair. What Spaz drew on the original cover looks neat, but it unfortunately covers the bulk of her hair, and just what happens up there. How do those pieces connect, and what does it look like as a 3D shape? I drew this a lot. You can see tiny little Sally heads from different views, trying to figure out exactly how she works, and eventually managed to get a basic idea from the layered bangs, or at least one of Spaz's downward spikes in the back too. Keep the blue eyes. At least for this form, I think there's something more unsettling about her blue eyes. Like she's so close to being the close friend you've known for the last 15 years, the similarities highlight losing her. After settling on a general direction, I did option 1 and option 2 sketches, and sent them off to Paul and writer Ian Flynn for review. The only difference between the two is the dark red band of metal at the base of her hair on option 2. Paul and Ian decided to go with option 1. But I really got into this band of darker red and brought it back for the weaponized stage, which I'll post later. I recall Paul wanted to give her thicker thighs, and he may have sent a quick doodle my way for additional metal plates added to her legs in the turnaround at the bottom. It's been 2.5 years, so I can't be certain, but I think that was his idea. If they weren't, then I guess I came up with it, but either way, I like how weird and slightly difficult they were to draw. I didn't want to thicken those parts of her legs. I didn't want to just thicken those parts of her legs. I wanted this piece of metal coming off and acting as a type of guard. Ideas that didn't get used. Up in the sketches you can make out a quick doodle while I toyed around with the idea of including an actual saw at the base of her hair. That could have been fun. Next to the cover of 29, you'll see a doodle for a potential body design with boots that widen at the bottom. I think that looks pretty cool. It might have been a good path to go down. And finally, the examples of Mecha Sonic doing wild stuff with his robot mouth. I always liked how imaginative Spaz was, and would have loved to see Mecha Sally do more stuff with her mouth. My favorite details. The wrist detail from Spaz's original design, her little tail spike, and those buckles on her boots. And that's basically Ben Bates explaining in the first part. Apparently there's going to be 3 parts to this, of exactly how he was approached to designing Mecha Sally as Mecha Sally back in 2011 when her robotization went down. Now I will provide a link to it so you guys can check it out yourself, but apparently apparently the inspiration for her roboticized design was Spaz's cover of issue 29. And apparently he had more planned for her. Yeah. When you take a look at the sketches, you'll see it yourself. When you click on the link, you'll see it yourself. But apparently he had a lot more planned for her. Like, her hair was supposed to be, I guess, I don't know, you have to look at it yourself. But yeah, he had a lot more planned for her. And, and then I guess, I know one thing that's not gonna make a lot of fans happy is when he says, "Oh, by the way, I was gonna plan to add a saw to the base of her hair," as if a laser gun wasn't enough. But yeah, you can kind of, I don't know if you can see that very well, but you can kind of get an idea of what he meant. Right there. Kind of get an idea. But again, I'll provide a link so you guys can look at it yourself. But yeah, going back to what I was saying earlier at the beginning, it seems that what I've said before, and I'll say again, what I said at the very start when this all happened over 2 years ago, the reason for the robotization, the reason for the weaponization, is she's going to, I basically said it myself, she's going to get a new look out of this. And I was right. So, and I know I'm not the only one that thought that, but I know I'm one of the first that brought it up. So, let me know what you guys think down below about it. Again, the links will be provided in the description box. Check them out. And comment if you like. Tell me what you guys think. And peace out. God bless. Take care. And comments are welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. It is 3:51 p.m. on this Tuesday, December 17th, 2013. And we are literally a week away from Christmas Eve and 7.5 to 8 days away from Christmas Day. Yeah, kind of surprising, huh? Which means we are now also, ladies and gentlemen, 14 days away from New Year's Eve and 14.5 to 15 days away from 2014. What a way to go out, huh? But anyway, I want to talk about something that I talked about on camera for the past few nights. And that is the fact that artist Ben Bates over at DeviantArt recently released basically some reference sheets on Sally Acorn's Princess Sally Acorn's Mecha Sally design. The first two parts, of course, deal with her roboticized design. The first part deals with how she looked originally when she was roboticized. And the second look deals with her weaponized look. Yeah, part one deals with how she was first originally roboticized, and the second part deals with her weaponized look. The third part has not been released yet. I'm assuming he's waiting till this weekend, or at least till this Saturday, to release part 3, or he is at least waiting until issue 256 is officially delivered into the hands of a lot of subscribers and readers, and then probably he'll release part 3. But I'm guessing it'll be by this Saturday. I'm hoping we'll see something by this Saturday, seeing as though we already know what Sally's going to look like. But when I posted this video along with the links on the Sega forums, as well as at Sonic Stadium, well, not the video, but the links, as well as
Well, here's what I did, basically. Here's what I did, ladies and gentlemen. At the Sega forums, in the cartoons and comics section, I posted a video as well as the links to where people can read what Ben Bates had to say. Over at Sonic Stadium and Satayam Sonic, basically Fans United for Sonic Satayam, or Fans United for Satayam. I posted I posted the links as well as I copied and pasted not only the reference pictures, the reference sheets for part 1 and part 2, but I also copied and pasted what Ben had to say, and I put them in quotations so people can read them over at both message boards. So, yeah, that's what I did. And the reaction has been pretty much the same reaction you would expect. And it's the same reaction that some people of at DeviantArt, when they found out about it, have gotten as well. You see, basically the situation that Ben Bates was talking about, you see, the reason he did this is because of the discussion of what's going on in the comic right now, and more importantly, the situation with Sally's redesign. So Ben Bates basically decided to give us an idea of how originally things were supposed to go down. And to say someone like myself, when this first all occurred, pretty much called this right off the bat, along with a few others, would be saying just a little bit much, wouldn't it? But yeah, it's like I've said before, and I'll say again, when you've been a reader and a fan of not just the overall Sonic franchise, but when you've been a reader and a fan of the comic book since almost the very beginning, then you pretty much have an idea of how things are going to go down. And when you have a fan who's become the head writer for the Sonic comic book, along with other comic book titles, you pretty much have an idea of what the fan is going to do, and pretty much what kind of outcome the fan is going to come up with. And from what Ben Bates describes in a lot of these, in these first two parts, I should say, in these first two parts, is the fact that had it not been, well, he doesn't come out and say this, but basically he indicates that if certain situations had not taken place behind the scenes, that originally the Mecha Sally arc was going to run at least to issue 250, just like some of us already thought it would. But due to some unfortunate circumstances behind the scenes, that did not come to pass. But when you read what he had to say, and I'll provide the link to both part 1 and 2, so in case you guys didn't read it before, you can read it now. Ben Bates basically just comes out and explains that originally it was going to be a 3-step process: robotization, weaponization, de-robotization. That's how it was going to be. But again, unfortunately, due to some circumstances beyond anybody's control, I guess you could say, that did not happen. Now, again, fans' reactions to this so far after reading all of this, even at the Sega forums, oh, the reaction is, well, how should I say? It's not just priceless and it's not surprising. Because pretty much, I'm not siding. Now, here's the thing, I'm not siding with anybody over at Devonaut. I'm not siding with any of the groups that I'm a part of. But when you have groups like Save Archie, the Save Archie group, when you have the anti-Mecha Sally group, when you have the anti-Archie group come out and pretty much say that the only reason she was roboticized was to give her a redesign, like I mentioned, when people like that pretty much come out and say this is why it's happening, especially after they see the redesign for the first time last year, you know, for those that doubted that, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but for those that doubted it, those people pretty much have egg, to coin a phrase, on their face right now. Even those that supported Ian Flynn have basically are not too happy with what they're reading. Because pretty much they're seeing exactly what, because pretty much not only does this put egg on their face, but it pretty much tells them that these anti-groups that were against Ian's writing will write all along about what was going to happen with Sally. And it kind of ticks them off a little bit, because even though to them Ian Flynn's still a good writer, and from an unbiased standpoint, to me, from an unbiased standpoint, he has the potential to be a great writer. From an unbiased standpoint, he has that potential to be a great writer. Pretty much Ian pretty much the fan that Ian was and still is, they pretty much see that the fan that Ian was and still is came around or came up with this solution. You see, if Ian Flynn would put his the fan portion of him aside, which I'm sure he does, to work on his stories, then maybe we wouldn't have had such a predictable outcome or such a predictable prediction of what was going to occur. But unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. Now, again, to say fans' reactions to hearing what Ben Bates has to say about how this was all going to be like a 3-step process, and basically revealing what a lot of people said they had called, like myself. Again, it does upset a lot of fans that tried to defend the idea that that wasn't going to happen. In fact, you got some fans, when you look at the Sega forums, going like, wait a minute, we dealt with 20 issues of crap, or 20 issues of filler, and some people would call it 20 issues of filler crap for this? For this reason? You know, to them it's like, well, why couldn't you just do this differently? Why couldn't you just do it in a way that wouldn't have us sit through or wait through 20 months of crap, or 20 months of unnecessary stories? And again, in my personal opinion, folks, this goes back to the fact that I believe, I believe Ian Flynn wanted to use this Mecha Sally Death Egg Mark II World Tour 2 arc as his answer to Endgame. as his end game. That's what he wanted to do. And unfortunately, due to some circumstances beyond his control, that did not happen. That is why we had as many issues on this arc as we did, because that's what he wanted to do. Now is Ian Flynn and no offense to Ian, but do you think he's really going to come out and tell you guys that? No, he's not. He's not going to tell you that. No writer of any kind, whether it's a script writer for a movie, whether it's a lead head writer for a movie, a head writer for a television show, a head writer for the graphic novels, head writer for novels like Hunger Games and Twilight and, whatever. Head writers for comics from DC and Marvel and Dark Horse and Image. Do you think they're honestly going to come out and say, oh, the reason we did this is because I wanted this to be my answer to such and such story by the other writer? I wanted this to be my legacy piece? No, they're not going to tell you that, folks. Which is why, in my personal opinion, a lot of those that kind of tried to give Ian the benefit of the doubt, saying he would not do something that dumb by having Sally roboticized, weaponized, and then de-roboticized with clothing that resembles what she wore basically as Mecha Sally. It ticks those people off, and I don't blame them. I don't think anybody blames them. I don't think anybody's going to come out and say, oh, well, we blame you for this because you guys wouldn't listen. No, nobody's going to blame them. Pretty much they're going to say, hey, pretty much what they're going to now say is, hey, look, maybe next time you won't bash us so much and you'll at least listen to what we're trying to tell you. You see, that's basically the impression these fans are getting with what Ben Bates is telling them. Some fans have even come out and said, well, if this was the entire case, if this was all just to give Sally a redesign, why couldn't they just do a side story? And that's what a lot of fans have been saying for the past few years. It's like, if this is all planning to give her a redesign, you could have just easily done a side story and had Bunny and Amy take her out clothes shopping, giving her, a makeover to where she has the new clothing and say, hey, this is what I'm going to wear from now on. Because to a lot of fans, it would have been easier to do that. But then again, this is Archie we're talking about. And when you're in competition to try to be on the same level as DC and Marvel, when you try to be on that same level as DC Comics and Marvel Comics, you do whatever it takes to get to that level. But again, like I said, when fans read this and they find out what originally was supposed to be the plan of how Sally was going to be roboticized and then returned to normal, it doesn't sit well with them. In fact, one fan said in one of the last postings one of the last repostings or replies, I saw at the Sega forum. One fan was basically saying, I hope we don't find out that this whole giving Sally clothing and all that has to deal with something else, or deal with what I think it's dealing with, or being done because of what I think it's being done for, or because of, because basically this fan looks at it like, they're hoping that it doesn't, they're hoping that on top of this, they don't find out possibly in part 3 or down the line that the reason for Sally's redesign and clothing is due to what a lot of people were assuming it was already dealing with, and that is the soccer mom's philosophy. Because like I said, if you think Archie Comics, Ian Flynn, or anybody's going to come out and tell you, oh, the reason we gave Sally a redesign is because of this, because of the soccer moms and all that, they're not really going to tell you because they want to protect the image of the company. And they're going to, so basically they're not going to tell you the truth. They're not really going to tell you everything you want to know. The only time I'm guessing will ever find out the true answers as to what happened behind the scenes is when the day Ian Flynn steps down, is the day Ian Flynn walks away from Archie and either goes to DC or Marvel. Only then will he be able to sit down and probably tell us the real reason. Probably have time to say, this is why. That's the only time guys like Ian Flynn are going to be able to say anything. It's the day they walk away or they get an offer from another comic book company to be one of their head writers. That's the only time, folks. That's the only time. And I guarantee you that's when we'll find out the truth. But anyway, like I said, fans' reactions to this has not been, the fans' reaction is, it's not surprising basically how fans are reacting to this because, some fans who did kind of give the Mecha Sally, Death Egg Mark II, World Tour 2 arc a chance, you can't really blame them for not being happy about it because being happy about what they're hearing here because pretty much everything, pretty much the roboticization, the weaponization and all that was just going to lead to Sally getting restored with a new look. And again, the new and again something's and now again, let me say this. Well, not again, but let me say this though. This 3-step process that Ben Bates is talking about, it's nothing new when it comes to media. When you have a main character going through a 3-step process similar to this, it's always going to result in the third process giving them a new look, a new redesign. We've seen it in different different animated shows. I mean, we've seen it with different animated shows throughout the 80s and 90s and even before that, like the 70s and stuff, and even the 60s, and even in the 2000s, we've seen characters go through this 3-step process. Even in live action shows, we've seen it. In animated movies, in live action movies, we've seen all that. We've seen this before. We've seen it in other comic books. We've seen it in different novels and stuff. So it's nothing new. But the only difference, I think, the fans that read about this three-part step or three-part step for Sally's situation, when they read this and they compare it to maybe the other examples I talked about, not by name, but those other examples, I'm sure a lot of them will say, well, those other examples, didn't give us 20 issues of rinse and repeat kind of situations just to say, oh, by the way, originally in 250 she was going to be de-roboticized and she was going to have a new look. She was going to have clothing resembling the roboticized weaponized armor that she had. So, that's how some of these fans will look at it. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's the big difference. When fans look at this, they say to themselves, and they have proven at times that perhaps they could do better. Mixed Fan 8643 over at DeviantArt has proven you could do better in your own eyes. He's done some rewrites all the way up to at least 255, if not 256. he feels originally should have been done if it had not been for the interference of Archie Comics. The crossover with Mega Man, the Ken Pender situation, and all that. And from what I read, Mixfan did a decent job. He really did. Now, it's not just doing rewrites of what you feel could have been a better option or better story run or storyline run. There's also fans that kind of feel that, hey, if they would have done this, it would have really made things interesting because it really would have made the story more intriguing, more dramatic, more action adventure, more cliffhanging like, because it would basically give the characters more of a reason to try to, let's say, save and restore Sally. For example, one artist over at DeviantArt, Sonic fan if you will, named Ace of Speed, did a picture of Sally when she was Mecha Sally, but did a picture of her, transforming into something similar to what Metal Sonic had transformed into at the end of Sonic Heroes. Something very similar. And if I can find it, I'll provide a link to that picture here. But basically, it was something that called her like a queen or something, whatever. And basically, Ace of Speed, when he originally drew this, and a lot of people looked at this, and this was during the Mecha Sally arc run, a lot of fans were like, you know what, that would be interesting if that would happen. And they said, hey, that would be cool if it happened, because that would be, taking it to another level and basically saying, hey, makes it look like it's more, and basically it makes it look more impossible to try to save her. But again, that's just another example of fans saying, hey, even though a fan saying, hey, look, we can even draw ideas that could be better used or could be used better in the story than what we're getting. So again, when fans read something like this, not only does it tick them off, especially those that supported Ian and the Mecha Sally run, the Mecha Sally arc run, if you will, but it makes them say to themselves, you know what, if this is what it was all about, if this was the reason this happened, we could have done better. We could do better. And pretty much they will come out and say that. They will pretty much come out and say, hey, we could do better. We can do a lot better no matter what people say. And again, Mixed Fan 8643 is a good example of that. In fact, you even have some fans petitioning right now to continue the original story arc, the original Mecha Sally story arc, the way it was supposed to be continued. Had it not been for the interference behind the scenes of the lawsuit between Ken Penders and Archie Comics. And, when fans look at this, again, like I say, it does kind of upset them because pretty much, like I said, a lot of the fans that, they were kind of like saying, oh, you're wrong about it. Ian Flynn wouldn't do this. Guess what? Guess what? Those fans that would say Ian Flynn wouldn't do that have gotten egg on their face about it. And another thing that I'm pretty sure is putting egg on their face is people like myself have come out and said Ian Flynn would not gut her, would not have Eggman gut her. Basically take her apart and all that. And when I read what Ben Bates had to say in both parts so far, never once does it indicate that Eggman was supposed to take her apart or gut her. There was no indication of that. So basically what that tells me is you had nothing more than weaponized armor. That's all you had. So, again, though, it's just, when fans look at this and they pretty much read this, and it's like, to them it'd be like, why would you do this? Why? Because basically the thing will be is, why would you put us through 20 issues with the plan to end this in 250? Why would you put us for almost 20 issues or 17 issues or whatever you want to call it, with the only to let us know that this is only now to let us only, well, basically to them it's like I said, one fan is basically like, wait a minute, you basically would have put us through 20 issues, 17 issues at most so far, but 20 issues if things had originally gone according to plan, just to give her a redesign, and again, it doesn't sit well with a lot of the fans. It doesn't sit well with these fans that were trying to hopefully not think this way, hopefully not hoping that this would not be the reason, not be, the reason she's gotten the new look, not be the reason, why the redesign occurred. And again, you could have people say, well, they're supposed to look like they're in the games. Okay, that's fine. Look like they're from the games. Okay, no problem. But when you have somebody come out and basically tell everybody, here's the 3-step process of how it was going to happen, how do you think fans are going to react when they find out the truth? They're not going to react. They're either going to react positively or they're not going to react very well at all. So, but anyway, that's basically what I have to say on Ben Bates. Basically, Ben Bates' 2-part release so far. Two out of 3 2-part. Basically, it's 2 out of 3 release on the Mecha Sally design and Sally redesign that was going to take place originally, had plans originally gone down the way they was supposed to. So let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. Take your time listening to this. And I'll provide the links down below if you want to read what he has to say himself. And I'll talk to you all later. Hey guys, while we're in quarantine, hashtag stay at home, hashtag 30 days to stop the spread or slow the spread, a lot of us are trying to find ways to kind of bide the time, whether it's playing video games, watching movies, playing board games with family, or getting on the computer and writing that novel or book we've been wanting to write. Well, others like myself, we're doing things like that, but we're also communicating with those that were behind the scenes of our favorite comic books, movies, and shows, and asking them certain questions about, this and that. Well, one of the people that I got in contact with today via Twitter was Ben Bates. Ben Bates was known for doing the line art for the Sonic the Hedgehog comic books when Archie Comics was publishing them. So, the reason I got in contact with Ben today, via Twitter, and I am doing this uncut, unscripted on the fly, but the reason I got in contact with Ben Bates today via Twitter was because Ben Bates uploaded today or yesterday a panel, a picture, an image from issue 230. It was basically after Sonic had gone back in time after the first Genesis wave and saved Sally from being gunned down by that torrent gun. And Sally, of course, was wondering what was going on until she saw the "Hi Sal" on the computer screen or something like that. So, long story short, Ben Bates kind of acknowledged that the way he was originally supposed to do it was the "Hi Sal" was going to be actually going to be put together by some loose wires, not by an image on a computer screen. But getting to the point, I decided that since he had brought up issue 230, that I decided I would ask him a question. Since he was closely behind the scenes, and since he was the one drawing the art, he obviously had to look at the script and how it was presented to him to, drop the scene. So I asked him basically that if I asked Ben Bates this, and I will provide what I asked him in the description later on. But I asked him basically if he had any idea, if he, Tracy Yarden, or anyone else working on the issue 230 of the Archie Sonic the Hedgehog comic, and beyond that, if they had any idea of how realistically, how long and far the story was going to go, like in the main comic and beyond that. And Ben Bates was kind enough to respond back. He said he had no idea how long it was going to go. From what Ben Bates was able to tell me, and I'll provide his answer in the description as well, from what Ben Bates was able to tell me, is that the way it was presented to him originally was that the Mecha Sally and in her later form, get that, later form, Neo Sally, were going to be discovered as being advanced robotics created by Robotnik. You see, Mecha Sally and Neo Sally were going to be, of course, like I said, advanced robotics, not the real Sally. Because the real Sally, from what he told me, would have been discovered to be in a cryostasis sleep or slumber somewhere on the planet. And that the next 5-year, get this, 5-year arc would be centered around Sonic trying to find her. So basically the one of the potential story arcs for the Mecha Sally arc, one of the potential revelations, according to Ben Bates, from what I can understand, is that the Sally Sonic and the Freedom Fighters were fighting against, the Mecha Sally, and then later on her form Neo Sally, would have been basically advanced robotics created by Robotnik to fool Sonic and the Freedom Fighters. The Neo Sally would have been a sleeper agent, according to what Ben said. Well, the Mecha Sally would have been basically what all the characters, including Sonic, thought were the roboticized version of Sally that sacrificed herself to help save the planet. So basically the story would have gone on a lot longer had it originally gone the way that Ben Bates said it was presented to him in the first place. But what are you guys' thoughts on that? Just thought I'd let you guys know about that. Comment down below, let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll talk to you later. Hey guys, I wanted to come on here real quickly and kind of do a bit of a basically a follow-up, unscripted, uncut, and on the fly on the thing that I talked about yesterday after work while I was waiting for my ride, and that was what Ben Bates told me on Twitter. Like I said yesterday, Ben Bates decided, well, not yesterday or not 2 days ago, but actually about a couple of days ago, several days ago, about a week or so, something like that. I gotta look it up again. He decided to post a few panels, one page, if you will, or a quarter of a page, from issue 230 of Sonic the Hedgehog, when it was under the Archie Comics license. And it got me thinking, because he was talking about the scene where Sally is rescued by Sonic after Sonic's kind of gone through the first Genesis wave, and he's able to go back in time and prevent Sally from being gunned down by that turret gun, and blast it into what Ian Flynn once called Swiss cheese. So, long story short, I asked Ben, and I'll look it up right here, right now, so you guys can see it, and I'll probably post this as a thumbnail to help out a little bit. But I asked him, this question, and this question was, it was kind of worded in a way that I should have corrected myself, but this is what I said. I said, to Ben Bates, I said yesterday, just a quick question. Did you or Tracy Yardlin, which is at Yardlin R on Twitter, or anyone else working on Archie Sonic issue 230 and beyond have any idea of realistically of how long the Mecha Sally arc was going to go on, especially across all comics, I should say, that being of course Sonic Universe and the main comic and stuff like that. So, that's basically what I asked him. And I said, just curious, asking this while, hashtag at stay at home. Basically, when the quarantine, ending with or not where you have essential jobs like I do, and many of us do, I just decided to ask him this out of curiosity. Again, the question I asked, and I'm repeating myself here, the question I asked him yesterday was, did you or Tracy Yardlin or anyone else working on Sonic issue 230, Archie Sonic issue 230, and beyond, have any idea realistically of how long the Mecha Sally arc was going to go on, especially across all comics, which includes Sonic Universe? Just curious, asking this while hashtag stay at home. And Ben Bates was kind enough to answer me back. He answered me back, and he said this, and I quote, "I had no idea. The way it was sold to me, Mecha Sally and her later form, Neo Sally, would be revealed as advanced Eggman robotics and a sleeper agent. The real," and he puts the word real in all caps, "the real Sally Acorn was in cryostasis, and the next 5-year arc would be Sonic traveling the world to find her." In other words, what he's saying here, what I'm getting from here, is this was part of the original pitch. Because he said this is how it was sold to him. So obviously, if he's saying the way the story was sold to him was, from what I'm getting, is this was the original plan at first. Like, this is what Ian wanted to do. And what that tells me is we would have been in for a 5 to 6 year story arc that would have culminated probably around last year or this year, had things gone the way they were supposed to, if not for the fact that Archie Comics and Sega and all of them had to find a way to get around the whole legal situation, behind the scenes legal situation, legations, if you will, when it came to Ken Penders and his characters and stuff, and thus resulting in what was known as the post SGW Sonic Genesis or Sega Genesis World soft reboot retcon. And again, like I said, what I'm getting here is this was part of the original idea. Like, the original idea was the Mecha Sally that we see in in the comics that they're fighting, in her later form, Neo Sally, which would have been, I guess, the Sally with the blades and all that, the soft retcon reboot Sally that became Sally in the post reboot or post soft reboot retcon from 252 and beyond, that those would have been revealed as Eggman robotics and a sleeper agent. In other words, the Neo Sally, that's known as the post SGW Sally, would have been a sleeper agent. In other words, a robotic. And that the real Sally was in a cryostasis, and that the next 5 years, which of course it's 12 issues a month, right? So you gotta look at 24 over 2 years, 36 over 3, 48 over 4, 72. You're looking at 72 issues, right? So had things gone the way they were supposed to, according to what Ben Bates is saying, we wouldn't have gotten this done until, let's see, when did this start? About 2012 or something like that, 2011, 2012. And it ended around, it was supposed to end, or at least start to end around 250. We would have been going on this for another 72 issues. So you're looking at possibly, if things would have worked out the way they were supposed to, you're looking at issue 412 or 410 as the culmination of this whole story arc, according to what Ben Bates is putting out there. Now, like I said,
what I'm getting here, because that's apparently not what we got or would have gotten had things not gone to crap, as some people put it. But what I'm getting is this is what was originally pitched, not just to him, but to a lot of people, including even Sega and those at Archie Comics. So that's what I'm getting. That's the vibe I'm getting. And I know I'm probably not the only one reading this or listening to this that's probably thinking, hey, that does make kind of sense. Because it does. It does make some sense. But yeah, anyway, it's just, it's like, this is the one thing I do appreciate about, being able to communicate with people that used to work on various forms of media that people like me are fans of, that, when it's all said and done, or when there's been enough time, they don't have to worry about an NDA anymore, which is a non-disclosure document or something like that. A non-disclosure document, an NDA. So it allows us to finally get some information as to what was originally planned. Now, I don't know if Ian Flynn, and speedy recovery to Ian, from what I understand, he's going through this, he's trying to recover from the situation we're going through right now, despite how you might feel about the guy. Despite the fact whether or not Ian would have revealed this later on in a chapter or a future installment of Lost Hitchhog Tales on his website, that's totally up in the air. It's totally a guessing point. But my thought process, again, when I look at this, is I think this was the original idea. This was what was one of the original ideas to go with, to really, I guess, make this the magnum opus that Ian wanted it to be. But my guess is when he presented this to not just Ben Bates and Tracy Arlen and all of them, but then later on Sega and Archie Comics together are like, yeah, it's a great idea, but we're not going to go for it. We're not going to allow it to go that long. They basically said, you can roboticize Sally, you can have her become weaponized and all that, but you have to have her back to normal by at least 250, 275. That's what I'm thinking. Was what Archie Comics and Sega told Ian, because the original idea is he wanted to go longer, and apparently what Ben Bates is saying here is this would have gone much longer than originally planned. Like, the original idea was to go up until, I think, last year or this year to close it out. Again, just a theory. Seeing as though the thing did kind of come together around 2013, I should say, in 2014, when we started to get back to normal, if you will, post SGW, if you will, that, according to what I'm understanding, this would have gone to at least 2018, 2019, if things had worked out. But again, I think maybe Archie Comics and Sega's like, that's too long, we got too much planned out, we need to have this done before then, and that's why Ian probably opted to conclude it around issues 250 and 300 at the most. So, that's just my opinion. But anyway, though, yeah, that's what Ben Bates told me. He said basically he had no idea. He said the way it was sold to him, Mecha Sally and her later form, Neo Sally, would be revealed as advanced Eggman robotics and a sleeper agent. The real Sally Acorn was in cryostasis, and the next 5-year arc would be Sonic traveling the world to find her. So, yeah, that's basically what Ben Bates said it was, how it was sold to him. Because again, like I said, he did the artwork, well, not the complete artwork, but the line art and all that for the for 230, for issue 230, especially the High Sal moment where Sally sees the High Sal on the screen. So that's just from what he told me, because apparently it was supposed to go a lot longer. But then again, I know some people might say, well, they'll just say this and that to get you off the case. I don't really know. I think, obviously, there's truth. To me, there's truth to it. Because Ben Bates had been with the comic for a long time. He's worked with a variety of writers, Ken Penders, Carl Bollers, Ian Flynn.
and he's basically drawn a lot of moments and panels and all that that correspond with what they wrote for the story. So, my opinion, I totally believe him. I think he is a reliable source on this, and that's just really my thoughts. So, that's just really my thoughts on it overall. That it's because to me, when I read this, it's like it's just amazing to see what originally was probably planned out from the start. Like, you know how when they work on a movie, when studios work on a movie, writers, producers work on a movie, that, you know, the first draft or the first drawings they give or they present is how they originally envision it, but then the heads up are like, yeah, that's great, but we don't want this because that's not going to work. We want this. You should go this way instead. You know, there you go. I mean, a good example of that to me, right off the top of my mind, is Woody from Toy Story. I mean, originally Woody was, you know, a jerk. He was self-absorbed, a jerk. Originally going to be the villain, from what I understand, in the first Toy Story. You know, and obviously the studio's like, yeah, we like Woody, we like the character, but we don't like him being the villain. We want him to be like the old school guy, like the outsider, like the one that's not willing but has to learn to accept that, hey, it's not bad having other toys around, especially when the person that's been your primary owner still cares about you, still wants to play with you, but they're more focused on having you work together and play alongside this other character. So that's kind of the best example I have, in my opinion. So, of things changing from what they originally were planned to be to what they became. But yeah, you know, apparently this, according to Ben Bates, from what it was told to him, this was supposed to go on a lot longer, like many years, like basically from when it originally ended with 247, or between 247 and 250. I was just thinking about what I was going to say there. Which was like 212, 213. It was going to continue on into at least 2018, 2019. So, yeah, from 2012 or 2013 to last year or the year before, that's how long apparently this was supposed to go. Had things gone that direction. But let me know what you guys think, though. What do you guys think down below? Let me know what you guys think down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this. You know, what do you think overall of this information that Ben Bates has given me and basically given the fan base? That the original pitch sold to him, or the way it was sold to him originally, as I said, is Mecha Sally in her later form, Neo Sally, would be revealed as advanced Eggman robotics, and a sleeper agent, I should say, and that the real Sally Acorn was in cryostasis, and the next 5-year arc would be Sonic traveling the world to find her. What are your thoughts on that? Let me know down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say on it. And I will talk to y'all later. I got to get myself up and going because I do have to work today, 10:30 to 3.